Okay, good evening. Welcome to the December the 9th, 2025 work session for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. The next item on the agenda is to call the roll. Alderman Barnhill.
Here.
Alderman Blanton.
Here.
Alderman Caesar.
Here.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
Alderman Berger.
Present.
Alderman Brown.
Present.
Alderman Potts.
Present.
And Vice Mayor Baggett.
Present.
And the mayor's here also. Next are citizen comments for items that are not on the agenda. We have two comments. We have Ned Dannenberg that wants to make a 2-minute comment and Annie Getz who wants to make a 2-minute comment. So please come forward and where's Annie? Oh, I can't see her, but I see her now. Okay, go ahead, Ned.
All right. Good evening. It's Ned Dannenberg from Bike Walk Franklin. I wanted to revisit an item from the November 11th work session that I hadn't heard come up again. This is the City and TDOT Joint Improvement Project at Mac Hatcher and Royal Oaks. I think the board is in agreement. We really need to include walkability as a part of a solution to all of our traffic headaches. Unfortunately, with the proposal that's out there right now at this intersection, I really feel misses the mark. Even with the local budget of $840,000 from us, this plan fails to answer a basic question for neighbors: can you walk from one side of the street to the other? So remember, this is the area that has the YMCA on one corner. Pretty sure they were required to build their own little sidewalk to nowhere as part of their development plan. The Forest Crossing neighborhood across the street with a sidewalk that starts at that preschool and goes down the length of Royal Oaks. So the makings of a sidewalk network are really here, but just for some reason the plans right now don't show us connecting them so people can cross the street. The construction concept that engineering presented last month showed all the extra turn lanes and signals and things, but still no crosswalks, even though we're repainting and redesigning so much of the intersection. So I would ask staff to direct the board to include ask board to direct staff to include pedestrian accessibility in this project. It would really not be too much of a material change, adding two extra crosswalks, wiring in some pedestrian signals, and pouring a small concrete pad as you're going around the corner. So this should add less than 10% to the project costs, but would really be a big safety improvement for everyone on the road. So I don't think we want pedestrian safety to have to wait a decade until the Mac Hatcher full, multi-use path is redesigned. Let's make this intersection functional for the people who live here today.
Thank you. Ms. Getz? You have 2 minutes, please.
Okay. Sorry, maybe I've been here so long, I'm getting hard of hearing. Like, I've lived here a long time. I'm Ann Getsy, 4080 Carters Creek Pike. I've been a resident here for probably 35 years, and it's been really great to work with a lot of you on a lot of projects that have been going on here, and we've seen a lot of growth, so I don't need to tell you that. But I do feel that Franklin is, Williamson County is kind of like all one thing. So one thing affects the other very much, and we're losing our beautiful county, and we know it's beautiful. I just wonder how, we know that the tourism, as far as dollars, pretty much is really good for the economy, much more than a residential chaos, which is what it's becoming. We don't have that infrastructure, but I don't see the means of getting the infrastructure by having an annexation. So it goes to the city from the county. But anyway, I just think breaks are sometimes a really good thing, just to slow down and study everything and know what the results and what the effects are. Breaks are made for if we're going downhill. It's a good thing to use once in a while. And thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll next go to Franklin Tomorrow Healthy Democracy Update with Mindy Tate.
Good evening. Nice to be here with you today. Thanks for letting me give you this brief update on this project, this joint project that we've been working on in 2025. Just to remind you, Franklin was one of 2 cities selected by the National Civic League earlier this year or late last year to participate in this Healthy Democracy project. The other city is Edinburgh, Texas, which is down along the Rio Grande in a different community than us, but shares a lot of the thoughts and issues that have come up as we've moved through this process. So next slide. what has been done? Many of you attended the October 21st Breakfast with the Mayors, which was held at the factory at Franklin, a very exciting project in conjunction with Franklin Tomorrow, the City of Franklin, and the National Civic League. We had about 450 people in attendance, including 60 youth in our community who are very interested in being active in our community. We had middle school representation from Franklin Special District as well as from Williamson County and other private and area schools. So we heard that day from Nick Vlahos, one of our consultants from the National Civic League, that the level of participation that day and the responses submitted by the table talks were something that were just kind of astounding in that number. That had followed some other events that we've done, kicking off in April 4th with a meeting at the Williamson County Public Library, which hosted us. That followed and was built off of a survey that we did early in the first quarter that had about 300 responses, as well as multiple individual interviews conducted by the National Civic League. We have met a couple times since then. We had a selected community leadership cohort of about 30 stakeholders at the police department on September 30th, and then once again met at the library in November to discuss youth engagement, civic awareness, and public services for participation. So next slide. So we have identified, along with the National Civic League, 3 themes that we'll be working on in 2026 from this project. Those include establishing a Franklin Youth Civic Advisory Council that would provide a structured platform for youth to advise on local decisions, ensuring they get an opportunity to focus on issues that are vital to them. Develop a digital civic hub, and we'll be creating an online platform for volunteering, events, and local initiatives, and then hosting an annual community and civic engagement events just to celebrate our community and intergenerational collaboration and make it fun to engage with youth. So next slide, and I'll just detail a little bit about each of these. The Franklin Youth Civic Advisory Council, Franklin Tomorrow intends in 2026 to add a youth member to our board of directors, as well as we have a meeting this month. The mayor and I have a meeting this month with the student body leaders from each high school in our community, public high school in our community. Then our intention is Franklin Tomorrow will host an open meeting for high school and middle school youth in the first quarter of 2026. And we are exploring a potential project for the group to tie in with established community events such as Kids Art Day. And that is a mosaic mural project that is centered around America's 250th. Now, there's a lot of work going on to celebrate the 250th anniversary of our country. And so there's a mural project that could be done nicely. We've talked with Lisa Clayton with Parks and others about this because it would allow citizen participation in this public art project. And then the mural would be given to the city and could be displayed in parks or in public buildings or opportunities. So the next slide. So developing a digital civic hub online platform. We have had conversations in the last few months with Hands-On, what used to be Hands-On Nashville is now Hands-On and affiliated with United Way of Greater Nashville to expand their volunteer hub to Williamson County. They are very anxious to do so because they are affiliated with United Way of Greater Nashville. And it could be hosted on a variety of websites and updated by local nonprofits. But also the Williamson County Public Library main branch has expressed an interest in assisting with this project. This would be the first step. It would be creating a volunteer opportunity for people to know where they could look for volunteer opportunities in our community rather than having to call around. Nonprofits could put things and have opportunities there. Alderman Caesar has been working on this project a little bit with the library and other organizations, trying to look for a home to create that civic hub. Every organization, including the city, has a website right now. This would just be a first step and allow us then to build off of that, but create volunteer opportunities in 2026. So we're excited about that. And then the final, next slide. Host annual community and civic engagement events. Well, obviously, this is Franklin Tomorrow's bread and butter. This is the work we do and have done for 25 years with our monthly Frank Talks lectures and our quarterly breakfast with the mayors. We're looking at how we do those. Most of our events occur at the beginning of the workday or at the end of the workday, but we're looking at how we engage citizens. So we may be looking at how and when those are scheduled for participation. We are also part of an organizing committee for a new TEDx Franklin that'll be held in March 2026 at Columbia State Community College. And the theme for that event is finding your place. And it's built off the idea of the third place, and each of us have our home, we have our job. What is our third place in the community? Is it your church? Is it a place that you like to hang out? But we're building off that philosophy, and that was brought up a lot in our conversation with youth in our community about how much they love our parks and being able to go out and have a place they can be together. So we're building a TEDx program off of that. And then, as I mentioned, we're considering a mosaic mural project as America's 250th project for 2026. We'd love to do that in collaboration with maybe Kids Art Day or another project like that where you have a built-in audience, and that would be a great opportunity to do that. And many communities across the country are participating in this America's 250th mosaic mural project, and we can choose a design. And then you could have up to 650 people participate in that project. So it would be a great way to do that. And then next, if you have any questions, I would say we are, this project, we've been working with the National Civic League. In 2020, Franklin was honored to be named an All-America City by the National Civic League. Until this past year, we could say we were the only city in the state of Tennessee. We'd like to be able to say next year that we're the only city in the state of Tennessee that has been honored twice. So we are able to apply again with the city for the All-America City 2026, which is strengthening civic health and building trust. And this award will spotlight communities across the country that are creatively engaging residents in collective efforts to create thriving and welcoming places where trust and belonging are abundant. And Mr. Stuckey and I have discussed this, not just the work that Franklin Tomorrow does, but obviously the work the city has done when plans are being updated or rolled out, the citizen engagement aspect. There really is a lot that we can highlight for this program. And so we're going to look at applying for that. Hopefully the deadline to do so is February 26th. So we have some time on that. But I just wanted to offer that update, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Alderman Caesar.
Sorry.
That's not a hint.
Wrong one. His lights
Wrong
are on.
one. There you
I gotta
go.
relearn it.
All right, I appreciate the preparation for this great comment. But I've been involved in this project, Mindy. It's something I'm pretty passionate about, but I've not been alone. Mayor's been in a number of these. Brandy's been at these. Appreciate the collaboration from all of the members of our board in supporting this. And you mentioned something that's pretty important for me from a passion perspective, and it's that Help Hub or the Civic Hub. And if you have a great idea, you shouldn't hold it to yourself. You should employ others to try to help you accomplish it. And the great idea, I think, is for us to create a centralized information hub that contains all of the nonprofit organizations that we have in our great city and the primary markets that they serve. We have so many people that are passionate about serving others in the city of Franklin, and they start a new nonprofit. And there's 4 others that do the same thing. And how great could it be if all of us banded together rather than starting another nonprofit? And part of this is to help the nonprofits know who else is in their space and how they could strengthen through synergies. And other part is for volunteers or businesses that are interested in supporting a particular special interest group, whether it's animals or whether it's people without the means to provide food for themselves. And we know the big ones. This is an effort to try to elevate and bring awareness to those who may not get front page article time. And how do we get our arms and hands around the number of nonprofits that we have in our city to help both parties come together and serve more together. So thank you for giving me a little bit of time. And as we continue to work through this in partnership with the United Way, Williamson Inc., and the library, I'm confident if someone at Leadership Franklin is watching this tonight and wants to take this on as their project, I will gladly stand alongside of you. But appreciate the additional time and energy we're putting into this.
Franklin Tomorrow previously hosted a website of all Williamson County nonprofits. That is available through the Community Foundation, and the listing, you can sort it by counties. It's just not very well known that you can do that. And the other thing is it's probably not what users are looking for. So we are happy to participate in discussions on that with others. We see an opportunity to get a start by having volunteer opportunities. It will need to be involve nonprofits in our community. They are going to need to update their information and be actively involved, both to gain donors, but also volunteers. And so it would need to be, while the library has offered their services in trying to keep it updated a little bit, it will need support by individual nonprofits as well. Both, any site that's started will. And the volunteer site, it can be put on multiple websites in our community, in the city, in Franklin Tomorrow, Williamson Inc., all these, so that people, wherever they start to look, can find that. So we're excited to get that started for 2026. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy, and I will recognize that we have one attendee tonight, the youngest person in the audience, Owen Johnson back there, who's gotten interested in what we're doing through some of this youth activity already. We'll go to item 2, which is Resolution 2025-94 to approve Benjamin Franklin statue at Williamson County Archives and Museum at 611 West Main Street.
Thank you, Mayor. Williamson County is proposing a statue at the Archives of Benjamin Franklin. All costs will be Williamson County. There's no cost to the city. And Historic Zoning and Public Arts Commission are both recommending approval. And Kevin Benson from the county is here if you guys have any questions.
Alderman Berger, then I'll get Alderman Brown.
Right. I think this is great. I've been saying that we need a statue of Benjamin Franklin for years and years and years. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you to Ms. Lewis, who has funded this. That is wonderful. My only question is the placement of it, where it is up near the building. It just seems so far back. I wish it were closer up to the square, up to the 5 points, so people would really be able to view it. It's going to be sort of hidden back there, and people walking by and tourists would see it if it was up closer. And I thought it really deserves a better viewing than back by the corner of the building. So that's my one comment. My other comment is actually a question. If that building ever gets torn down or redeveloped over there, which we hope someday that happens, maybe that whole corner can get revitalized, that with that one section, not the old post office building, of course. But is that statue going to be movable, that it can be picked up and moved, and maybe moved closer? I'm just really concerned it's so far back.
Yes, Alderman, the reason we placed it where we did is we did not want to place it in the Veterans Park area. There's a line of demarcation there that we created, so we got beyond that, closer to the building. So that's the placement location where we decided. As far as moving the statue, it is movable. We're bolted down to the concrete. We can unbolt it and move it at any time.
Okay.
It weighs between 500 and 800 pounds.
So the veterans area, does that encompass that whole area up front?
It encompasses, basically, there's a sidewalk
Yeah.
that separates where the archives is and where the Veterans Park is. And so that is all Veterans Park to the forward there.
Oh, jeez. I just still think it's so hidden from the tourists and hidden from the people back there if you're walking. So that's my only concern. It's so beautiful and it's so wonderful to have that. And I think it deserves a better positioning in that property. And I don't know if you can take another look at that property and see if there's a space that would be. But anyway, okay, thanks.
Alderman Brown.
One comment about statue, one about just generally 250th. Great that we're doing it. He was our first postmaster, so over there by Five Points is a great location, and glad that we're doing that. And hopefully some storytelling pointing people that direction. My comment about 250th is, Mindy just mentioned the mural, we have the statue. It seems like we have a lot of different activities happening. I guess is the city doing something to put all these together? Do we have a 250th committee in the city? Like, I feel like I just keep hearing about things happening, and maybe I've missed the memo here, but is there something organizing the fact that we have a lot going on?
There are a number of things that are fitting into some of the special events work we do anyway.
Okay.
So around 4th of July and some other things. So it is happening organically. There's not a specific central clearinghouse for 250th events, but we are working with city staff, CVB, other folks that come forward with ideas and helping support them. Franklin Tomorrow, of course, has an idea as well. So we're trying to accommodate those throughout the year, but there's not a specific central hub that is organizing or driving that.
Got it. Feels like a big opportunity missed, to be quite honest with you. Yeah.
Alderman Caesar.
What would we have to do in order to establish a 250th celebration committee?
Yeah, I think we need one.
That is at the board's direction.
I would like to establish a 250th.
I think you want to articulate what you want to achieve from that.
I think I'd like to.
So you might want to give it some thought.
And maybe we should connect offline here to make sure that we're not just establishing a committee for the sake of committee's sake. But a project like this would be fantastic to unveil in a sequential way, so that it made sense, and so that all of us aren't fighting for the same weekend or the same day. And how do we make sure that we align?
Well, the logic with this event is to do it on Ben Franklin's birthday.
Right.
So there are things that are that try to tie into logical connections, and there are elements that play off of what we already do and trying to enhance them. But we'd be glad to serve in any way. But it might be good for the board to give us some focus of what you are hoping to achieve from it. There are a number of partners that are thinking about it, and we a lot of times become the hub that folks come to, and we're here to serve. And we have a great special events team that really helps think through how to make things happen.
And I know Monique would do a great job through helping us structure. I think what I'm suggesting, Eric, is rather than allowing it to kind of happen by default, for us to acknowledge this is going to be a big celebration, there will need to be some substantial coordination. What do we need to do as far as give direction to you to establish this, so that organizations like Franklin Tomorrow and others aren't forming these things, and not that they're intentionally doing it, but aren't forming them in vacuums, that we can kind of steer and guide and maybe build a calendar of events, so to speak.
Minimally. Yeah.
Well, sorry.
I've got Alderman Peterson, and
Okay.
then I've got Alderman Potts, and I'll go to you, Alderman Bland.
I just wanted to also have us think about maybe working with the county in something like this. I mean, it is certainly going to be a very special time for us, but it might turn into a really big thing if we were working with the county instead of maybe expecting them to do something and us to do something separate.
Alderman Potts.
Thank you, sir. I had two things. One, Kevin, this is more of a question. I was going through the papers prior to the meeting, and I know that there's flags in front. I know that there's some lighting right there for the flags so they can be flown all day, every day. Is there any type of lighting that's going to be installed for the statue?
Yes, sir. That's another reason for the placement. There's an electrical outlet right on that corner, so we can light up the statue in that corner.
Okay, perfect. All right, good. And regarding the 250th commission, that may have to arm wrestle between Alderman Brown and Alderman Caesar to see who's going to chair this one, but that's all right. All you. It's I do think it's a great thing. I know that I've even heard one particular citizen want to donate 250th branded banners to the city and have those installed. So I think that having a committee could be a good thing. And, God so loved the world, he didn't create another committee. But I think in this 250th celebration here that there is a great opportunity for us. So I think it's a good idea.
Alderman Bland.
I guess I was going to ask a question that should be obvious, but if it's the 250th anniversary of America, wouldn't that center around 4th of July? So why would we do it any other time? Sounds like you've got your date. Just build it around that, see what else is going on and how you partner.
Well, that's
it'd be-
what we've been working on,
Yeah.
quite frankly, is how to enhance that date and reaching out
Yeah.
to some other partners and doing some internal thinking. That the 4th has been our focus
Well,
at
that's-
this point.
It's
but-
like, when do you do Christmas? You do it on December 25th. When do you celebrate
Yeah.
the birthday? You do it on the birthday. So I think you've got your date. You just work backwards.
We had a Christmas parade last weekend.
Okay, but anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Alderman Berger.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, it's the year of our founding, so the year, I think there's gonna be a lot of events throughout America all year long celebrating it. So it's not, everything is jammed into one day where everybody can't go to everything. So I think, from what I'm hearing around the nation, that there are events being planned January 1st all through the year. Big time on July 4th, of course. I do think that we need not a clearinghouse committee or anything like that, but some kind of committee that has everything filters to them so they, Monique, that you all would know everything that's going on in the city, because there are other people, other organizations that are going to be doing things. And if they're open to the public, it'd be good to know that, and we can advertise them to let the city know, so we could help publicize that and keep a calendar. And then also help us with the marketing efforts and the PR efforts to get that out to the public. If we not, like fellas were saying here, just hit and miss kinds of things dribbling in, we really do need to have a way to coordinate that so that we can be better stewards of letting people know where and when things take place, and that they can choose to go to them if they'd like, especially for families and everything. So that's my input. I Greg, totally agree with you, Greg and Matt, on that.
Yeah, as Eric said, we have kind of been brainstorming on some things. We just don't have anything definite. And we have been working with Maureen Thornton, and we are helping with the county unveiling of the Benjamin Franklin statue. So,
Item 3 is Amendment 1 to City of Franklin Contract 2022-0191 with Williamson Medical Center for the coordination of emergency medical first responder services. Any questions on that one?
Perfect, thank you.
Item 4 is Resolution 2025-98, resolution of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen of the City of Franklin adopting budget goals for FY 2026 to 27.
I'll walk through this fairly quickly. We'll pull this up as we move into the budget process, which is now officially kicking off. We set goals. We want to establish where we want to end at the end of our process, and the budget that our staff team and that I recommend to you around the 1st of May reflects your goals and your priorities. We have a couple different ways we break those goals down. We have some regular goals that tend to be evergreen. Every budget should reflect them at some level. And then there are some more specifics that we want to target for the upcoming fiscal year, which will be fiscal 2027. That's sort of hard to say. I mean, that's a big number. We're moved along. The years continue to roll along. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide here. Like I said, we have financial goals, non-financial goals. Those tend to be fairly consistent year to year, and then some specifics around 2027. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. And these do reflect your updated strategic plan goals. We have the first 4 that we have had for really 13, 14 years now, focusing on a safe, clean, livable city, sustainable growth and economic vitality, being fiscally sound, quality life experiences. And then we've added in the last year or so 2 other priorities that we want to focus on: organizational health and operational excellence. So we want our budget to reflect, and we tie every initiative back to one or multiple elements of your strategic plan. So looking at 2027, we do look at the updated strategic plan. We have a 10-year planning horizon, but an additional more direct focus on a 1 to 3 year window. So that is reflected in what we put in our budget. We continue to look at, and our discussion later tonight will get at this idea of how we look at growth-related investment and financing, and the ways that we can facilitate timely, significant investment in infrastructure that maintain quality of life and services. That we want to work towards ways to enhance affordable and workforce housing, attainable housing in the community, look at strategies on how to do that. We have some example projects that have been working through that the board's provided some direction on recently. That will continue to be a focus. And then we want to make sure we are focusing on alignment around growth, around infrastructure, the broader growth plans of our community that we are all part of. Let's move to our next slide, please. And then we talk about some specifics around enhancing our services overall, expanding the ways in which we engage our community to help us work well together. We work in partnership to be a strong, vital economic engine within our community and within the state, across the state. Let's go to our next slide. And then let me touch on some of the keys that are always there. A structurally balanced budget. So that means ongoing revenues and ongoing expenses are in sync. We also make sure we are in compliance with all of your policies around reserves and the issuance of debt. Those are all key, kind of foundational, and then just good practices around delivering the best quality services we can. We know we get 1 year to deliver on those, and 2027, and we want to do that at the highest level we can. This process centers around those broad goals, but then we will dive into specific needs within each department that help us achieve those priorities as articulated by the board and the goals we want to achieve for the community. So this is here for discussion tonight. We would bring it to you the first meeting in January for a vote to kind of set those targets. And we'll be on our way with the budget process, starting with our January budget and finance and ending with the delivery of the recommended budget to you the first part of May. I'm glad to take any questions you might have.
Alderman Brown.
I'll just reiterate the comments I made at Budget Finance, which are, first and foremost, I appreciate that the long-term planning is in there, but I really appreciated that you made the note in there about trying to get some quick wins within the next 1 to 3 years as well. Let's not lose sight of our long-term vision casting and planning, but we do need to get some quick wins when it relates to infrastructure and traffic. Secondly, organizational health. We have to be competitive. It's only getting harder, especially as it relates to pay, and we have to work beyond pay. And so I think looking at culture and looking at ways to incentivize people and build a great team and attract people to be here beyond pay scales is important. We've done a really great job on compensating our folks in the last year, but at some point you just can't keep doing that. And so we've got to find other ways to compensate and get people to be attracted to be here. And then my third thing is just I love that looking for ways and strategies around affordable and workforce housing is in there. It's important. It's one of those big audacious goals. But if it's not in the goals, then we won't even try. And so how we get there, we all are working hard for, but I'm glad that it's in there. So those are my 3 comments. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I should have mentioned one of the goals does focus on delivery on the 10-year CIP. One of the things we want to continue to focus in on is project delivery, both within the bigger projects, but also smaller projects and projects of opportunity that we've talked about a lot in this process. So that's a primary focus as well, I should have mentioned along the way. So thank you.
Would you expand just a little bit on organizational health? Are you talking about physical health? Are you talking about interaction with each other?
It's really about the culture of the organization, that it's strong, it's positive, it's a place people want to be. One of the things we just completed in the last month or so, the latter part of this year, is an employee engagement survey. We did that about 2.5 years ago. This is a second round of that. You may recall we were the only local government in the state of Tennessee to get a top workplace recognition. So we're gunning for that again. And we want to continue to build on it. It's not about the award. It's about the culture and the reflection of how we do in supporting our people and taking care of our folks and building a strong, healthy culture. We'll give you some insights on what that survey showed probably first part of next year. So you'll get to see how we're doing. And that's an important element of just sort of gauging how people feel. Do they feel valued? Do they feel the work they do is important? And how do we support and build up our folks? And so it does talk about pay, but it talks a lot more about how you feel about your team, how you feel about the broader organization. Is your work meaningful? And so that is all just part of asking the question, getting the responses, and finding ways to build from there. And so that is an example of what we've tried to build throughout our team, which is to value our people, to build those relationships both within our team and in the community that makes it a strong organization. The better we serve and support our team, the better they serve and support the community is the philosophy.
Great, thanks for that
Thank you.
explanation. You ready to move on? Item 5 is consideration of draft policies and procedures relating to consideration of petitions for the creation of real estate infrastructure development districts. You'd asked to bring this back so we'd have plenty of time to talk about it. I do have a number of speakers that want to speak. The plan that I would like to propose is that we give the board plenty of time, and when you run out of energy and speaking, then I will call the public speakers up and we'll allocate time to them based on how much time we have left. So it might mean they get less than 2 minutes. So depending on how long the board wants to discuss.
Mr. Mayor and Board, if I could, just a few comments to start us off, and we'll run through a few additional pieces of information we've provided, but there's not a lot of presentation tonight. We gave you a lot of presentation 2 weeks ago. We really want the open time for you to ask questions. We have our full team here to help answer questions for you as well. But I'll just sort of summarize where we are and a couple additional pieces. The policy we've worked to develop with your guidance really focuses on applying the use of the Infrastructure Development District tool to achieve one or more of 4 key policy goals. And those center around driving exceptional design, driving attainable housing, driving significant investment in infrastructure, and then supporting redevelopment where that makes sense. So to clarify, we've really worked to try to align this process in terms of timing and in terms of what normally happens in the development process with layering this in. So the idea is, as you're going through the normal development process of presenting a plan, that this is a companion to it. So the idea would be specifically that when the board, say, is approving a development plan, they are at that time also approving, at least at a preliminary basis, the not-to-exceed amount that an IDD would be eligible for. Now, there'll be a reconciliation later in the process when we know more. We have specifics around what the true cost is to deliver it, but it provides that clarity in sync with the process folks are already going through and that you're already voting on. It's just an added component that you would be able to review and consider and decide whether or not you want to do it. I would just point to the application itself, which is a companion to the policy. The one thing I want to point out to you is there's a lot of blank lines. It is intended for the person coming to make this ask of you to really state their case, put their best foot forward, and explain to you how they're meeting the multiple policy components that you've put a focus on. And why is this worthy of taking this extra step and adding that tool to the toolkit for that specific development? There was some concern about, is it too prescriptive? What is that? And I want to emphasize again, the listings we provided as part of that attachment are examples. They're samples. They're not prescriptions. There may be other ways that's achieved, but we wanted to be very extensive in making sure you understood some ideas of how this might be met. But it is not meant to be the only path to get there. And that's why there's so much open space for folks to tell you and state their case. We're not trying to answer it for them or create an exhaustive checklist, but we do want to say these are the kinds of things that would seem to move the needle in the policy areas that you've identified. We do continue to push that the target of a 3-to-1 value to lien ratio is a good idea, a very good idea, and you ought to emphasize that, and you ought to set the board higher than the minimum that's out there in the state law. Again, it's not a prescription. It gives the board the freedom to say if there's something you really think is important, that you're not beholden to that, but you ought to set a higher goal. And what we've seen, especially in other AAA cities in Texas, et cetera, they're well above a 3-to-1. That's just the nature of it. And I think you'll see the nature of development in Franklin is probably going to typically drive a much higher number than 3-to-1, but I would never apologize for setting a goal higher than the bare minimum. That's really what I wanted to cover. Our team is here tonight. Vernon and Walter, Christine and Betsy Knotts, our outside counsel, and Shauna here, of course, is our city attorney. And we're here to answer any questions you have or help with the dialogue. I did want to have Vernon walk through the question and answer document that we provided to you, that may be helpful to just sort of answer very directly in as kind of straightforward a language as we can some of the questions we've heard as this has been developed, and then we're glad to help you in the dialogue that you have and take your direction and move forward from there. So take it away, Vernon.
Oh, thank you, Eric. Good evening, Mayor and Alderman. Before I get started in working through the questions that have been shared with you, I do want you to know that Rick Rosenberg and Rachel, they sent you an email today that summarized an earlier conversation we had. But more importantly, Rick and Philip Hart, who also works with developers on establishing districts, and I have had a lot of conversation for well over a year. And they have been gracious enough to share their insights of how development districts work in Texas, Florida, and other states, and the intent of how they see them working here in Tennessee. But ultimately, what they shared with me that I want to share with you so you fully understand, if and when you approve us to move forward with a development district, we're going to work together to make that happen. That's the bottom line. They represent the developer, and our team will represent the city in crafting a recommendation that you can consider. And it's because of that dialogue that we've had that we're at this point today. And after the conversation this evening, it's the intent that we'll tweak that policy and bring it back to you for consideration right after the first of the year. So with that, I want to go through the questions that we gleaned from our conversation 2 weeks ago. And these are just short responses. And Christine, Betsy, Shauna, Walter, Eric, we can elaborate as needed. But hopefully Eric's summary just reiterates what we're going to talk about, starting with, when does a developer apply for an IDD? The expectation is that they will submit a notice of intent to establish an IDD at the same time they submit an application for a development plan. That development plan will work through the process. Staff will work with the developer through that process to identify the essential infrastructure needs for the development, just as we've done for years past, but also take the policy and look and work with the developer on what will that community benefit piece look like. Once that development plan is considered by the Planning Commission and they provide a recommendation, right thereafter, the developer will submit a final petition. That will now travel along with the rezoning for the PUD and eventually come to you with the development plan. And then, as Eric mentioned, as the process continues forward to finalize the site plan, which are really the civil drawings that can have some more accurate pricing associated with it, that's when everybody involved with it will do the financing package, and a development agreement will be the result. When is the IDD given approval? Ideally, it'll be at the same time that when the board considers a development plan, as I just mentioned. When there isn't a development plan, we'll make accommodations when there's only a site plan to make sure that you are engaged in that process. I should also say too that we've talked internally that when a development plan comes in and it includes a notice of intent and an IDT draft petition, that we can share that with you, that has been submitted. So there's an awareness that staff is looking at a development plan concurrently with an IDT petition. What is the approval process for an IDD? Well, once that, and I've stated some of that, so I'm going to summarize this a little bit in my comments here, is that when that notice of intent comes in, staff will complete its normal initial review, work with the developer to identify what's essential. What is their proportionate share we've talked about that's needed to support that development, just like we've done for years. And then also identify what's that municipal benefit and how will they work together, so that when that final petition and development plan comes before you, you know what's essential and what the community benefit will be. And again, that final petition will come at the time that the development plan is considered by the Planning Commission and will be scheduled for a public hearing for the rezoning and then the development plan consideration. What are the requirements for a project to receive IDD approval? Well, simply stated, it meets the state legal requirements. Some of that is untested, but we've been having these conversations with Rick, Philip, others that are familiar with IDDs and TIF districts to try to make sure it moves forward. But we do want to identify that municipal benefit so you can consider if it's meeting your intent that we've tried to outline in that policy. What types of improvements are eligible for an IDD? Well, we've talked about that the improvements that will directly benefit the properties that are established within the district. And that's outlined in state law. So as the improvements will be finalized, they'll be identified in the development plan as we do today, but they'll be finalized as we work through that initial site plan and subsequent site plans that we'll bring forth to you for approval. Will additional funding be needed for improvements other than the IDD? For most projects, it will. It's pretty plain and simple because the IDD, as I just mentioned, provides for funding for that benefits, directly benefit the properties within the district. And so for everything I've heard, that it is very likely and expected for at least the municipal benefits that the developer will use more conventional means of financing to achieve the desired outcome. But there are creative ways to achieve that depending on the scale of a project, perhaps one that has multi-phases. How long will it take for a project to receive IDD approval? Well, once the development plan is ready to be submitted and we have the notice of intent and we work that development plan through the process, a couple months, gets to a joint workshop, to the Planning Commission, and then to the board. Once the board approves that final petition, they can go ahead and file that in a month. The state law says it needs to be filed at the county within 60 days. I think I had a typo there that it said 5 months. The state law says 60 days, sorry. How are the bonds issued? Well, the bonds are issued by a public building authority. We've talked through some of that. We had some representatives from bonding companies, underwriters come in and speak to you. And to be issued by somebody with extensive experience in development districts. These terms are negotiated by the financing team, which includes the issuer, bond counsel, financial advisor, underwriter, trustee, and the developer. And I've received some of those documents, and they're very long, but I'll leave you guessing of how long those documents are. and I won't read them all either. How will the assessments be issued? This is a work in progress, and Rachel Blackhurst from NIOP, the county council, Shauna and our team are working with the Tennessee County Trustees Association to see how that mechanism can be achieved here in Tennessee as we go forward. So that's one of the things that we're going to continue to work through.
And that's really, just let me add on that. That is really a statewide issue about how the legislation is framed, what it said, what the legislation that was approved, what it says. And there's, I think, some difference in reading between different folks involved. So there may be a need to clarify that through legislation. We've kind of alerted NIOP to that. This is really not a Franklin issue. This is a state legislative issue, and just making sure the county trustees, the state, and the folks that want to use the tool are on the same page. I don't think that's insurmountable, but there may be some need for clarification. It depends on who's reading what's there now and how they interpret it. So that's out there. We want to be clear on that piece.
Thank you. And then the last one is, how will IDD funds be distributed, to the developer to fund the improvements? And that'll be specified in the bond documents, working with the entities I previously mentioned and the developer. What I would say from how we look at this is that there can be milestones set so that as the developer's moving forward, achieving some of those improvements, those funds can be released. Ultimately, we would have a holdback of some understanding to ensure that all the improvements that are part of the district and the development agreement associated with the district have been completed, inspected, and accepted by the city before those final funds are released. So you may be thinking, well, what about a performance surety or insurance bond? That likely won't be necessary, since we can hold back some of the funding on the bonds to ensure that those improvements are completed. Still, we got to work through those details, and I'll leave you with this. As we've talked, and this morning with Rick Rosenberg and Rachel and all of us, it will continue to be a work in progress. We're a leader. Other jurisdictions, you've probably heard, are looking towards us. We're putting something in place here that works in Franklin, and we'll be open to tweaking it as we go forward to make sure it works as well as you want it, but also meets the intent of the opportunities associated with a development district. I'm not sure if Betsy or Christine, Shauna, Walter, or Erica have anything else to add. Thank you.
Your time.
Vice Mayor, you're up first.
Question,
Yes, ma'am.
a few questions. Sorry.
Your microphone is not working. Will you borrow Clyde's?
Sure.
The mayor's.
Clyde, throw your mic towards him.
Clyde, throw your mic this way.
Thank you.
So the last thing, what is the benefit of withholding the funds until the infrastructure's complete? And here's why: because the bonds are collateralized with the property, typically, that that this is being developed for. What is the harm that could? Why would we care? I think really, why would we care if they don't complete the infrastructure, they lose their property, they default on their bonds, versus why would withholding it? Does that make sense? Like, what is the
Sure, I'm going to let Betsy.
I can understand why we would care, like if this is an uncollateralized development. I think like traditionally we do this in our developments, but what?
So this is Betsy Knotts with Bassberry. We care for those reasons. We don't want to default, and we don't want to have to deal with foreclosures, and we don't want a failed development. I will say there are structures out there where there's a holdback, but there's a portion that goes to the developer up front, and then when they reach certain milestones like a certain portion of the infrastructure is put in, more funds are released. And it's very common in Texas to use. It's called a holdback structure. And my understanding from those is it's somewhere in between, the really conservative, we're not going to give you anything until it's done and inspected and approved. That's the very conservative approach. And that requires a developer to have money put in up front. This is kind of the middle ground where they're given a portion of it, and when certain values are achieved and certain infrastructure is put in, then more of it is released. There are federal tax laws that will require it all to be spent within 3 years. And so you still have that 3-year kind of race to get it done. And so I think we could get comfortable with that structure, and it's pretty common in Texas.
I agree. It was a real question. I don't have any kind of I think I was just curious because it seems like, of course, intuitively, you don't want any defaults and that kind of thing. But also, the tool is meant to, I guess the holdbacks just need to be kind of fluid with that, because depending on the project, it could be a significant. If you've got a $20 million X piece of infrastructure that is super critical, and this is, we're holding back 75% of it, and then they're having to go get finance. You're kind of you kind of could easily get back to just the private market funding. Right, without the tool. I just don't want us to be so hesitant to distribute that ahead of time that we lose opportunities. I think that's going to be an issue with some things, and I just hope we're flexible to.
Yeah, I think what I would say is that that's a conversation with the developer and their development team of the timing. And if I could, I'll use an analogy, a real life analogy of what we do today with road impact fees. Oftentimes with the development plan, we bring you a road impact fee agreement. And in that agreement, it outlines the improvements and it outlines the funds eligible for reimbursement. That developer can submit invoices as they're completing that work monthly. We'd prefer to have them quarterly, but then we'll process that reimbursement based on the agreement.
Okay.
So with that case, obviously, we do have a performance surety to make sure that work gets completed. But it's the same principle, I would say, and I really don't foresee the concern you raised at that extent. The holdback would be proportionate to the work that needs to be completed.
Makes sense. Two more quick questions. I think we need, so you mentioned staff recommendation, and I would just challenge staff to think about this, and the private sector is what this, when you're bringing something like this that is kind of this standard of, is there a community benefit, right? That's the decision that we're making. Does this warrant based on the community benefit of the project? It's kind of like a vesting extension, right? The criteria to some degree, which is the community benefit. And staff, I believe, when you bring forward those vesting extensions, it doesn't come with we recommend, or does it come with a specific recommendation? It doesn't. It leaves it up to the board to determine if there's a community benefit. I would charge staff to think about that through that lens, stack this up next to the criteria we have, because I think we could get into this situation where it is a free-form application, and we get in the situation where an applicant is trying to, they think it has a community benefit, and it doesn't. Staff is saying, well, it doesn't meet enough community benefit in our minds to give the recommendation for yes, and we're gonna have this back and forth. There needs to be some level of, we get it to a point where staff feels like there's enough, and then the applicant feels like there's enough, and then you kind of make that kind of presentation to BOMA, and then we decide. I do feel like there could be a situation where staff's trying to get them to get to the recommendation of yes, and then it's just a bunch of back and forth. And I think looking at the vesting, that might be my advice. And then the last thing, why third reading? Why the second reading approval of the IDD with the development plan? Is there? And I'm thinking through this from our side. The IDD vote would need to be after the development plan approval vote in that second reading. But why not the third reading?
A development plan is approved on one reading.
One reading.
Right.
And
But
it
it's in the
aligns
second
with your
reading.
public hearing that is the second reading for related zoning.
Correct.
Et cetera. So that's why we're trying to make it sync up with that. But you're right, as we place it on the agenda, you certainly would do the development plan and then the IDD, but it's meant to sync up with when you're hearing from the public and you're
Yeah.
deciding if the development plan is acceptable.
What would the ramifications be if?
Yeah, Sean mentioned too, we typically do impact fees, agreements at that same time as well.
What would
We
be
try to
the-
sync all that up.
What would be the ramifications if, because we have 3 readings for rezoning also for a reason, and it's typically tied to development plan approval. There have been situations where on the 3rd rezoning vote, we denied the rezoning, which killed the whole thing. So I guess I would just say, think about, I want that, what would happen to the IDD? We voted on that before. I guess it still would just die. It would
Be
die as
treated
well.
just like the development plan because they're linked.
Okay.
So
That was the question.
if you've taken out the development plan, you've taken out the related components.
Yeah,
Well, we would approve,
Yeah,
you would
including
approve both on the development plan, and then you have the 3rd reading. If we deny the 3rd reading.
If the
all-
underlying zoning isn't there, it goes away.
Okay, that's all I need.
And to just to plant the seed, again, once the team has an application, notice of intent, and we start working through it, we know that when you consider a development plan on that one reading, it entitles the property with certain uses, density, right? And when we come to you, it's envisioned that we'll have that development plan, and again, I maybe overemphasized it, but for good reason, that we know what the infrastructure needs to support that development. Again, that proportionate share will be part of that development plan, and then what the municipal benefit will be, that will work very closely with the developer. If you decide the municipal benefit should be more or less and want to tweak that, you'll be able to do it without impacting the approval of that development plan, because you'll have entitled it and let it stand on it in itself. It's the agreement with the development district that'll bring everything together, from the financing to how it moves forward.
Thank you.
Alderman Peterson.
I want to talk about this. We've just been talking about the developer and the city. But if you go back and look at these things that we got back in, several months ago, in September, it talks about that the way this money comes back is that the people who buy the houses are going to be assessed, like in the city of Bristol, $1,000 more than they would have to be. I mean, they're having to pay taxes $1,000 more than they would be paying if they didn't come through this. And in Knox County, they say that it would be, in their example, $1,400 a year that they would be paying on property taxes. After this was done, they had to pay $2,400. In other words, it was 40% more that those people in these districts are having to pay in property taxes. And so remember, it is going to be affecting the people who buy this property. It's going to mean their property taxes are so much more than if they were buying the same price house somewhere else in the city of Franklin. And I think that is just, it just means those people that are buying these houses, maybe not knowing that they're going to have to pay a lot more money than anybody else who buys that same price house in the city of Franklin. And so I do not see how this is really workable, I do not see it's going to be helpful for the people who are going to be buying the property and living there.
So just to clarify,
Yeah.
that's accurate. It is a special assessment. It is a form of a special assessment.
Yes, it is.
comes through the process of property tax collection, but it is not a property tax. It
No,
is a
but those
spec-
people don't know.
It
And
is
they're,
right. I'm not disagreeing with you. I just want to clarify. It is not property tax. It is a special assessment
Exactly.
within those districts that is collected along with the property tax.
That's right.
But it'll look and feel to those residents a lot like a property tax because it'll come with their bill.
exactly.
intent.
And it will be a lot more. And so I do not see how that's going to be helpful for the people who actually come in and buy the house that this property is built on. I mean, it's going to really, really hurt them. Really hurt them.
Alderman Barnhill, and then I'll get Alderman Berger.
I think we should probably back up, and it's fine to look at the people who are going to come in to buy and let the buyer beware. But I think we probably need to understand how this affects and how this benefits the current resident of the city of Franklin. And when I sit in and listen to this, I'm not sure how, when we're looking to use this to enhance some undeveloped or property that needs to have some additional creativity added to it, I'm not sure where it does that. And I don't necessarily understand, Vernon, the analogy of the road impact fees versus the IDD, because the road impact fees we collect, we don't necessarily give back. We can have an agreement, but the developer's paying those up front. It's not a bond issue on that particular part of the project, so I'm not sure to understand that analogy. I need to understand, or I guess I have to, but I need to understand how, if we go out on the street someplace and we ask the average citizen out there, how does this help you? And the term that we've used here that I've heard that does concern me somewhat is that this streamlines the process and speeds up the process of development. And if that's true, which it probably is, and that's the purpose of it, then I'm not sure that that's what the average citizen wants to hear from what we're doing here. So that's my concern about what we're doing. I don't necessarily, I'm not overly concerned, pardon me, Ann, about the person that's not here yet, that's coming in to buy this piece of property. They need to understand what they're buying and why they're buying it. And it would be no different, as far as I'm concerned, not much difference in an HOA assessment on a subdivision someplace. You've got the HOA in place, something has to be done. So the HOA assesses additional charge against the property owners. But I don't see, I'm not fully understanding how it benefits the current resident. So that's kind of what I'm looking for in here and how it does it.
Mayor, do you want me to try to?
Please.
Be briefly. The analogy I used with the road impact fees wasn't about a developer that pays the road impact fees. It was solely an analogy based on the timing of when those developer impact fees can be reimbursed for infrastructure improvements that they make. And those are outlined in the development agreement, meaning they don't have to complete all the improvements that they state they're going to complete, and then we reimburse them the fees they paid. We do that in increments, so they're not, using all of their own financing, but they are getting work done in concurrently with the reimbursements. The other piece that the two other things I'll share with you is that in development, that a developer is going to do a pro forma on what the infrastructure costs are going to be for development, and how are they going to develop the property, their above ground built environment, and then what will be the return on their investment. And today they would get conventional financing that comes at a certain interest rate, and they're going to build that in with the timing of their development, and they're going to price their product to make sure they have a return, whatever that is, and that's closely related to the current market. What I would say to your question, to try to help clarify, what is the benefit to the other citizens of Franklin? That benefit is what we've been spending a fair amount of time on, that we've outlined some guidance. It's that municipal benefit piece that the developer will fund with its own equity. For example, that if we ask the developer to come in and improve an intersection because it's failing in the area, and that's on them, that's a benefit to the community, and it's not directly related to each of the properties, such as the infrastructure that's within that development. Now, that's one example, so that's the opportunity. And as I leave y'all here in a week, I do want to assure you that there's an opportunity here for the city if you truly look for that municipal benefit. There's a lot of people, a lot of businesses, a lot of developers that want to be in Franklin. They may not need this tool, but as we've been talking about, the gap for us to continue to enhance our existing capacity of infrastructure, this is an opportunity to do that. And, I'm sure our team will help differentiate what's normally required, that proportionate share of infrastructure versus that municipal benefit. And that should be appealing to you as these developments come forward.
And I would just quickly add, if I might, before I recognize Alderman Berger, that we have no tools to create attainable housing. And so this is a community benefit if we can create more housing in that missing middle or wherever we're trying to create more housing. I think that's one of the benefits of the community. Alderman Berger.
Mr. Mayor.
Are they going to pay less on their sewer return money to the property tax and annual assessment? They're not going to be. They're going to be paying more.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'd like to address that.
Go ahead, Alderman Berger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to back up here first. I had some things I was going to say, but this is what the whole program is about. And I know some residents had said a number of things that were incorrect and also did not compare apples to apples on other districts and what we're doing here. But one of the things we've heard for years and years and years, if we really go back and listen, is that quit putting the burden on the backs of the residents that are currently here all the time. And so this tool actually gives that opportunity. We've stated, and I wrote this down, stated that growth must pay for itself. Okay, growth never pays totally for itself, we know that, but we try the best we can through development fees, impact fees, that we can help get development to pay its fair share. I mean, if you made development pay for every single thing, I think they could literally take you to court and say that's extortion, because they're not responsible for everything. But at the same time, we've heard this, growth has to pay better for itself. So IDDs, it's finally a tool that exactly does that. And yet we want to fight and say that the ability of the city to have another tool in our toolbox, well, I'm not going to do that. I think having that tool there to be used when we want to use it, when it is appropriate, is a great thing. Now, the developers fund early costs and provide the guarantees, and the property owners within that district, they pay those assessments, and that you were talking about. And the city receives public infrastructure completion without passing the cost onto the taxpayers, existing taxpayers. So I feel that rejecting an IDD while simultaneously insisting that growth continue to pay for itself and do a better job is contradictory. So this is a tool that says, hey, new growth, new development is going to pay for that. And these people are not in the dark. They can't be. It's illegal for them to be in the dark. I mean, they literally, it has to be in the contract. They literally have to, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it is required that there's a certain sheet of paper within those closing documents up front that they have to be told about the assessment district. They also have to sign a separate sheet that is the assessment. So they know there's assessments there. The assessment is not in forever. It ends at a certain point when the assessment is paid. So it's not going to be for their entire life that they're going to be paying that assessment. So people can choose to live there or not. That's an option. No one is forcing these people to go and live in the development with an IDD. They are not doing it. And if this hadn't been successful, it's been around since the 80s. If it hadn't been successful, it wouldn't be continuously happening around the nation. And Tennessee would never have developed it. They put on one of the strictest guidelines. Our state has taken all of the programs that they've seen, and they put on the strictest guidelines. And then there's been a lot of time, a lot of learning over time to take anything that's failed in any of these cities and say, how do we do that better? Texas, Florida, a lot of them have been improving these as they've been going along for years and making different changes to improve their districts. So I think what we've got here for the state of Tennessee certainly is something a lot better. And I think, back up, I wanted to also talk about limiting, I've got a couple questions. When Patrick brought this up and about releasing certain funds. So when the funds come out to release to the developer, are we able to have that authority, or how does that work for them to say, you know, some funds are released and then they build and make sure the infrastructure is in place before other funds are released? We make sure things they're meeting milestones. And so who do we write that into there every single time we do an IDD?
It's normally in the trust indenture. It's in the bond.
In the bond
Go to
documents.
the microphone and
Yeah,
answer that.
so she said it's in the bond documents. So I just want to make sure I knew it was there somewhere, but I didn't know exactly where. So I'm comfortable with that because I think it's very important, if you look at other communities, how things were done with no parameters, and then they put parameters on, and then they found out they had to do a better job at that. And I think Tennessee has addressed that stellarly, you know, and said, yeah, we have to have these parameters and we have to have safeguards in. So I just want to make sure that we had that. And then the other question I had, is there anything in this that we talked about this before, and Vernon, about do we have any limits on certain acreage, or certain size of development, or the certain size of the investment that they would not be eligible to apply for an IDD? Or is that window just sort of open and up to BOMA to decide? In other words, if someone came in and said, we're going to have a community, we're going to have commercial, we're talking residential here. But if we're going to have like a residential area of 50 homes or 25 homes versus 200 homes.
We've talked early on about some potential limitations that is not in here at this point. There's an element of this that the market will make that practical or impractical.
Yeah, I think so.
So we sort of went away from that because a real small development is probably not going to make sense for the magnitude of it. But that'll and some of this too, just by the sheer math of what it can support will drive some of how far it can go as well, because it's got to be something that will be sold in the market, supported in the market as well. So those are elements that you can put in if you want, but it seems like a lot of it is sort of self-regulating, at least at this stage. But we do this and we're going to learn some things. So you may see some things that may not be worth the effort that come in, and you may want to start to put parameters on them, and that might be a reason to say no. But we didn't want to put that limitation in, at least up front. But again, it's your choice. It's your policy.
Well, I think it's good not to put it in up front. And I think there's two things there. I think number one, people won't apply for it if it's too small. And number two, it's going to be probably, I looked at it more market driven. And And then at some point, and they're going to come before us, and if we don't like it, we can just say, no, we don't need to accept it. But at the same time, we'll live and learn down the road if we do need to put a parameter on there later. But I just want to make sure we weren't sticking that in there, because I just didn't think it was necessary at this point.
And that is, if I may, if that is the work that Mr. Rosenberg, Mr. Hunt, and the few others around the country that do that work on behalf of the developer to make that initial determination of whether it's going to work and pencil out, but also, then to work through it as the entitlements get in place and all the other financing documents.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I've got for now. Thanks.
Alderman Brown.
So, I guess stepping back a little bit, since this law sort of came into play, let me first just say how I've wanted to use this. This has never been about an accelerator for growth. Never has been. The word that has always been sort of in my mind has been exceptional. If ever we give this tool to somebody to do what we already expect of them, then we have already failed ourselves and them. That's not what this financing tool is for. It is not to help them get cheaper money to do what we already expect them to do for road impact fees and all of that. This was always intended to be a use case in creating exceptional benefit to this city, whether that is exceptional infrastructure, meaning infrastructure above and beyond, to Vernon, the case he used, intersections beyond the nexus or beyond what we might require sewer infrastructure. Again, exceptional infrastructure beyond what we can expect TDOT to grant to us, what we can do for ourselves, and under the growth pressures that we have, there are not buckets of money laying out there for us to go gather and to go build. And we know that. And so this is one of these ways that we can fill this gap and build infrastructure in this community by using a tool like this. That's what Vernon was just saying. There is opportunity in this community for us to use a tool to build exceptional infrastructure ahead of growth if this tool is used in that type of way. The mayor just said another exceptional use. The state precludes us from using any kind of way of getting attainable housing. This tool, however, the state law does allow us to leverage financing tools to get attainable housing. This tool allows us to do that. So, and in terms of redevelopment, I still look at the 96 Murfreesboro Road corridor as an opportunity in this city to beautify our city. And I just still think that creating an infrastructure development district out of there, I realize how hard that would be with all the different owners, is a huge opportunity to create a better flow of traffic down through there. So I think the four things that you've talked about here, exceptional design, housing, infrastructure, and redevelopment, are the four things. And if we always think in our minds about exceptional use, this isn't for everybody. I hope we do say no. I do hope we avoid giving this out to people who don't understand what Franklin is, who just want to come into our community and build mediocre. This isn't for them. And this isn't about just giving free, cheap money to people who just want to do the standard. This is about exceptional. And this is an exceptional tool for exceptional benefit. And that is what I hope we give back to the existing community. But it also is about not placing that on current residents. And the problem has been that that's our only means. When TDOT doesn't give us the money, when residents don't want the growth to pay for, the infrastructure that we need, when we don't want to raise the taxes to build the infrastructure, then we got to have the tools to do it. And so have new growth pay for itself. And there is no surprise. The law requires transparency. There's some communities actually put signs up that say that you're entering a special assessment district. That is how much transparency is required. And quite frankly, Alderman Peterson, there are a lot of times when these costs are eradicated at the closing table. They pay them off at the closing table, or the seller, the builder will actually get rid of them ahead of time, because the market's going to demand that cost. If they're sitting next to a community that doesn't have a special assessment, they're going to be market competitive. And so the market's going to dictate what they can sell that lot, that land for, that house for. And so those decisions are going to be made by that developer, how much of an assessment they're going to put on that lot and that house, whether or not that deal is done at the closing table. All those decisions are going to be made. And to Alderman Berger's point, they're going to enter that closing table knowing full well that I want this development because it's exceptional. It's an Armistead, and I'm willing to pay an HOA fee, a special assessment fee that's exceptional for an exceptional opportunity to live in this community. And that's essentially what it is. And it is an assessment. It is. It absolutely is. And they'll go into it fully aware. But it is putting it on new growth and not on our current residents to build that exceptional infrastructure and an opportunity to get housing and affordable housing and attainable housing in our community where otherwise we are dead in the water to try to make that happen. Relative to the, all the back and forth on things, Eric, I was thinking, and Vernon and everybody, I was thinking, what was I trying to solve and sort of really thinking about the nuts and the bolts of all this thing. And I avoid, and Alderman Baggett said a little bit is, we don't get a lot of time. We can't talk outside of these meetings, obviously, right? So, and a lot of times in these meetings, we don't have a lot of time to talk. And so if we're really going to consider a petition for an IDD, and we really are talking about exceptional, I think my concern was that a petition would come in and there would not be enough discussion time allocated to really talk about exceptional and to really get on the table. And if it came in too prescriptive, that it would be a discussion of whether or not it met staff's recommendation or not, and not about the board saying, what is it that we are really demanding the community benefit be, and what is exceptional. I think that, Eric, at the end of the day was my concern. It wasn't really about what staff was recommending. It was, man, what's the opportunity for us to really solve for what is the exceptional benefit to this community, and what are we really going for? And so I think I'm settling a little bit into your opening lines about right. You said it well in the beginning, which is, there's caps, there's guidances, there are ratios, but at the end of the day, there's 4 key things that we're going for. And if this board can sit down with a well-crafted application and have a discussion about what is this applicant really promising from an exceptional benefit to this community, in order for us to offer up this benefit, great. Let's have that discussion. I think our agendas need to give ample time for that discussion. And then look, if there needs to be modifications to those standards, then those are discussions we have based on the benefit that we're asking for or that we're granting, right? I would argue that if somebody offered us to give us 40% attainable housing, I don't think it's probably going to happen, but if they did, that's fantastic. And I'd probably be a little bit more generous with some ratios, right? And so, I think those all need to be fluid conversations, and I guess that's where I wanted the conversations to go, is I wanted to be able to make sure that we could have those conversations and it wouldn't be so prescriptive that it was line itemed out, and that we were just simply reading a checklist. It either hit it, didn't hit it, and then that was the end of the discussion, and then this board didn't really have a chance to really formulate a great IDD opportunity, because we may get 2 of these a year. I mean, in all reality, we see 4 or 5 PUDs a year, maybe. But we may see 2 or 3 of these a year. I know it feels like everybody's going to want to do these, but in reality, maybe not. They may not qualify. They may not really want to bring the benefit. We don't know. And so, I think that's just the goal here, is making sure that there's enough flexibility. I liked your recommendation, Alderman Baggett, about it being more about if we see the community benefit, then there you have it. Less about here's the strict recommendation and it either does or doesn't. Because I think that conversation is really, really important, and that it really does focus on exceptional at the end of the day. I did have 2, maybe 1 question. I understand the development plan timing. I think I'm understanding that timing. I guess my only question is, let's say either their feasibility or our ask of them at the development plan stage, either our ask of them or either their ability to determine whether they even want an IDD based on their feasibility, I just wonder if that's pretty far down the path for them. How do they get a read early enough? That could be a pretty costly change if we made a fairly significant ask of them at the development plan stage, or they got all the way to development plan stage. They're pretty far down a feasibility to decide, oh man, an IDD doesn't even really work for us.
Yeah.
Or it does, or now, you know what I mean? Like I'm nervous that's pretty far down the pathway. Is there a gut check phase for them earlier? I get the development phase from an approval perspective. I'm trying to understand the cost implications, the timing implications of it being early.
So this is a really important page.
Yes.
They are declaring their intent at the neighborhood meeting stage. So that's very early.
Yeah.
It is also before you at the joint conceptual workshop.
Right.
I would really encourage you to be at the joint conceptual workshop to give that input. Seriously, that is a really vital part to give a sense of, are you on target? Are you slightly off? Are you not even in the right county? Literally.
Yeah.
So, I think that's something you need to really, and especially these early days when we're all learning something, if this is the path you all want to go down, that's going to be really important. And that is a chance to refine that. They really finalize, as it talks about, their petition at FMPC recommendation. So that's before it gets to you. And then you have work session. You have, you know it's coming. You'll have first reading. You're not voting, but you have time to talk about things. Then you got public hearing and second reading, which is where you're making at least a preliminary commitment about the total amount and what it's for, and does it reach there. But I that is something to be mindful of. You've got some stops along the way. If you want to build some more structure in there or dialogue in there, there's places to do it.
Yeah.
So
that was my only.
Yeah, it'll be something we may learn from as we do it, but there are opportunities for you to refine it, give feedback, have it work through, and get better or get closer to what you hope to achieve.
My final comment is, of the top 50 planned developments in the country, 88% of them belong in a special district. These do work. They do create amazing communities, and so. I think we're going to learn in the first couple, but the reality is Tennessee did a good job of taking from other states, building the best guardrails. We're creating even stronger ones. Regardless of the 2008 housing crisis and other non-relevant case examples, I think we have a chance to do some good here and overcome some things that we don't have otherwise if we don't do this. And so we need a policy in place, and I feel pretty good that we can open the gates pretty soon here to try get one through here. And so anyway, those are probably my top comments.
Alderman Potts, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great discussion. The majority of my notes here, I think everybody has kind of touched on. What Alderman Brown was just wrapping up on, his last question was actually my first question that I wanted more clarity on, which was that gut check moment. And Eric, I appreciate you stating that and explaining along those milestones where we can do that. This is something where we're going to have to learn a lot along the way. I do have a little bit of concern right now with staff providing a supportive or non-supportive recommendation and then it coming to us and going through that process and then BOMA having an opposite or overruling consideration in the end against staff. And I think that's going to be some hard lessons to learn if there are any. I'm not going to say that there would be, but I think that's something for us to consider. And along the same lines is I would want to make sure that annually we evaluate how many staff members are needed to support this moving forward. And upon that annual review, I would want to make a determination if we needed additional staff to support this, or if we needed to specialize or further educate, get some CE along the way for the staff members that are doing this, rather than just having to learn through experience. We are we either are or will be one of the first through the IDD gates. And I want to circle back to something that has been said on the board, but also, Vernon, you had mentioned, and to reiterate, this is not a tax. But in order to do that on an annual basis, I want to make sure that there's funding available either through allocated in the IDD or through the city that's educating these property owners that when they get their statement every year, that they understand that one line item right there and what that is. And I think there's some easy, not inexpensive ways of doing that, but I think it's necessary for us to do that probably for the next, if this is a 20-year, 25-year, 30-year plan, at least the first 10 years to really make sure everybody's there, if not to have targeted mailing. I did agree with, it brought up, I think Alderman Baggett was the first to start us tonight. And Vernon, I did like the approach of the holdback structured approach. I think that there's more benefit to the developer as they're moving forward on that rather than waiting towards the end with holding a large percentage of that away. Someone made a comment earlier that this only affects or only benefits this particular area, but even as Vernon made the comment about this can benefit intersections along that area. Alderman Brown made reference that this is another tool for us to gain some of the CIP projects that are needed right now. And I think it's absolutely necessary. I do have a word of caution on that, though, is I am concerned that these individuals that are coming to and doing this IDD for the first time, maybe they got the best staff ever, but maybe they don't. And when they're doing this IDD and they don't know, hey, I want to provide this type of intersection improvement or this type of emergency service improvement, lightly, because we've used this before on a fire station. Do they know what that cost really is? How are they going to go about getting all of that information? I just want to make sure that, we're getting that on the front end. And then the last 2-3 items here is what the mayor had said earlier is this is a tool for affordable and workforce housing, attainable and workforce housing. It is one of the few tools. If y'all will remember 2 weeks ago, we actually passed a $250,000 improvement for 2 properties for Habitat for Humanity. It's been since 2017 or 18 since the last time that we actually allocated those funds. This is a way to get housing for those people. For those that need that. And then long term, I am looking at that higher 3-to-1 ratio to make sure that we are maintaining our highest levels of fiduciary responsibility. And with that, I'll hold the rest of my comments.
I've got Alderman Caesar who's not had an opportunity to comment, and then I have a follow-up from Alderman Potts, and then I want to go to the people that want to speak, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's been a lot discussed this evening, and I'll keep my comments brief, which can be hopefully I'll do that. So the first thing I would say is that as I look at this, I see this as a tool that many have said is a tool that supports our ability to provide infrastructure so that the existing residents aren't burdened by the implications of new development, traffic, limited services, sewer, things that in the past we've not been able to afford, maybe become a reality with a tool like this. My role, I believe, as I look at this, is to mitigate risk for the stakeholders as well as maximize some of the benefits that those stakeholders can receive. The benefits to the stakeholders, in my mind, maybe first I should qualify who the stakeholders are, in my opinion. It's the city, it's the residents, it's people in neighboring communities, county members, and it's also the developers. Make no mistake about it, this could benefit all of those stakeholders, and I think it's our job to make sure that we build a program that is beneficial to all. As I look at risks, I think one of the greatest risks, and like clockwork, Betsy leaves right when I have a question for her. One of the greatest risks, I believe, of a project like this is the financial risk, not only to the developer, but to the people that are living in that new potential community and to the city that will support that community. And that great financial risk and quality of life risk, I believe, is in the instance of a default. Alderman Baggett talked about collateralization, and we'll make everybody say that word 3 times fast before we leave today. But we recognize that these bonds are supported by the properties that are there, but we've heard mixed reports from experts, both lay experts and professional experts, on whether or not these IDDs or projects within an IDD have defaulted. Some of the information I hear is that they default like the rain falling from the sky, and others will tell us that they've never defaulted. And so I don't know what the truth is, number one, but what I do want to understand, and we may never get to the truth, but what I do want to understand is, in the event of one of these projects not completing, what happens? And I don't know if we should maybe table that for when Betsy is able to provide more information, but that's maybe the biggest question I came tonight with, is what happens in the event that one of these things goes south?
The bad kids.
Well, I don't know that I'm asking for communication from the audience, but what I am looking for is to continue. I'll just continue the conversation. I said I'd keep this brief. I think I've covered how maybe it benefits existing. I think that's a very prudent and wise question that Alderman Barnhill asked. I think Alderman Peterson is stating a very important piece, that it does raise the cost to the existing residents or the people who are buying that new property. I'd be shocked, and I hope we find the realtors that don't disclose this as somebody is looking through a community like this, and I hope they're disbarred, because this would be a crime for somebody to move into an area and be surprised by an assessment that's in that area if they're looking to buy a new. And so I hope that's not happening. And then the final piece, I would just 2 final points. I do have some hesitation with a staff recommendation, because the endorsement is what I'm concerned, and that we then have to reverse the staff recommendation. So I would appreciate if staff were collecting information and helping steer, but maybe not giving that definitive stamp. And I've been a part of boards where that staff recommendation carries substantial weight, and I've been a part of boards where that staff recommendation carries less weight. And I don't really want to see us being at odds in that regard with these projects. And then the final piece, we've talked about the administration and how perhaps the county could help support administration and collection of these. I know we've also talked about a 5%. And this is very tactical, so I apologize for going very granular here. We've talked about a 5% administrative barrier or cost. I'd rather see us go to a 5% or actual, with the greater of the two being the reality, because we don't know if this will cost us 5% or 7% or 9%, and I'd rather us as a city not be exposed to that potential additional risk. And so that's, as I conclude my comments tonight, thank you for helping us shape this. I think we're getting closer to good than we were in previous meetings, and appreciate the time that the mayor has given me tonight. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Real quick, I've got regarding the extra step, the joint conceptual was brought up. It does not need to be with Planning Commission, though, on these IDDs. I just think that joint conceptual meeting is probably why a lot of folks here don't attend it, unfortunately. But there's just too many people to weigh in. That forum talking about IDDs is probably not the place. Maybe it's a meeting before or a meeting after.
Or we can provide additional time.
Or additional time, yeah.
It's going to take some more attention, for
agreed.
sure.
I think
Point
joint
is well made.
conceptual may not be it, but that around that time frame.
The timing is when you
the
want it.
frame is. And I think the other thing is, how many improvements have been warranted by a development, Vernon? I can remember a few in the last 4 years where there have been improvements, road improvements warranted by a development that were unable, and I'm not looking for like a specific number, just really acknowledgement, but that was economically infeasible in the current structure. And I think that I can think of one in Cool Springs, some apartments that where 2 intersections in Cool Springs were warranted to be improved from an apartment complex at the end of McEwen. 2 intersections and an interstate were warranted, and we all heard from that developer this continuously, quite frankly, for about 6 months, the sob story. And I understand, and we made a change, and we said, you know what, actually staff said, you know what, 2 major intersections improved is probably economically too much, but the development warranted both of those to be improved because of our traffic studies. I wonder if this kind of tool existed. Could that have, I mean, and the world may never know, right? If that, but I think those are the kinds of situations, to your point, Alderman Barnhill, which is where those have existed out there, these possible improvements that have just been a hair close to being feasible or not feasible and agreeable or not agreeable. But maybe with this tool, you end up getting the applicant coming in with all of these things. And the final point is it's their burden to prove to you, Alderman Barnhill and Alderman Peterson, that there's a public benefit. And if they can't, then that fee doesn't go on. We get to vote on that, every single one of them. We get to decide if the level of benefit to the community is worthy of that fee or not. And I think there'll be really interesting scenarios that come before us. But if we don't do this, we don't have that tool. There is no what if. We can pass this and say no to every single one of them if they come before us and it's just status quo. But I think that's what the community needs to hear, is that this is something that there must be demonstrated benefit of the community. And I imagine if we go hog wild with these and growth exponentially takes off, guess what? We probably won't be sitting up here very long, will we? And I think that's important to know too, is that we still have to hold to our constituents, the ones that live in the city, for sure, and making sure that we're taking care of their pocketbooks and utilizing these kinds of things to do what I heard on the campaign trail, which was let new development pay for infrastructure. And just because some folks don't understand this and want to get all, start convoluting all kinds of things and make noise and call it a tax, which is not, that's just irresponsible. And for us to have this tool is vital if you actually want to have development pay for infrastructure. So bottom line is we get to decide. We get to decide if it's a community benefit. And if you think, Alderman Peterson, that fee's too high, just say no.
Okay, we're going to have some public speakers, and I appreciate you emphasizing it's our tool. Thank you. So we're going to call Janet Curtis, Shane Kimbrough, Robert Eiler, and Karen Smith up to start out with. You have 90 seconds. Please be ready to speak because we're trying to get this meeting finished before 7.
My name is Janet Curtis. I live at North Chapel Road in Franklin. And thank you. I want to speak briefly about the difference between what the development industry promises with mixed use and higher density projects and what residents actually experience once these projects are built. And this is from a June 29, 2025 article. We're told these developments will be walkable, affordable, and vibrant. We're told they'll reduce sprawl, conserve land, and foster a stronger sense of community. Those are great ideas in theory, but the reality on the ground is very different. In mixed-use areas, residents and commercial tenants routinely clash over noise, odors, bright lights, parking shortages, and delivery trucks at all hours. Homeowners often end up subsidizing commercial costs through higher association assessments. And many restaurants and shops simply can't survive on limited foot traffic, leaving empty storefronts and broken promises. Higher density brings in its own challenges: less privacy, more noise between units, limited and costly parking, and increased traffic in areas with no public transit. Dense redevelopment often raises prices, pushing out working-class residents instead of helping them. And with more pavement and less green space, stormwater problems and flood risks get worse. In short, marketed benefits rarely match the lived reality. Residents deserve honest impact assessments, not sales pitches. Growth must be balanced, thoughtful, and designed to protect quality of life, not diminish it. Thank you.
Thank you. Shane Kimbrough. Well, we'll go to Robert Eiler, followed by Karen Smith.
Good evening. Why are we here tonight? Is it because groups of voters came and said, our city's stagnating, our state's stagnating, we don't have enough development? I don't think that happened. Is it because our bankers said we don't have enough money to lend to developers and we need our government to help? I don't think that happened. Is it because the development industry, like every other industry, is looking to government to subsidize it and provide it with crony opportunities? Possibly. You know, our young people today, when they're surveyed, they say capitalism doesn't work. But they don't know what capitalism is because our government has taken over everything, especially finances. Every one of us in this room is going to pay a lot of money towards the student loans of students who aren't paying, and they're never going to pay hundreds of billions of dollars. It doesn't stop there. We were all assured that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, two complex organizations, publicly traded, were never going to be a burden to the taxpayer. But when the crap hit the fan, what happened? We all had to bail them out. And the history of bailing out development industry is pretty long. Do any of you remember the UDAG grants?
You'll finish up, please, Mr. Eiler.
The UDAG grants, so many people went to prison, they're gone. What about Davidson County?
Yes, sir. Your
They
time's
look
up.
around financing, tax increment financing, those buildings aren't paying.
Thank you, Mr. Eiler.
Thank
Your time's up.
Hello. Happy holidays, everybody. My name is Karen Smith, and I've learned a whole lot today by this discussion, but I want to talk about a couple of things, and that is new development pays for itself. I want to relay a quick story about my brother who lives in Richmond, Texas. He's outside, but he's close to a subdivision that supports low-income, affordable housing. Richmond is a growth boom, and he commented to me that the subdivision has a high rate of evictions. Homeowners are unable to pay the high assessment fees and the mortgage, putting added strain on the assessment administrators. His MUD assessment fees also went up to cover the infrastructure costs. Okay, now I know comparing Texas to Tennessee, MUDs to IDDs is like comparing apples to oranges. It may not be the same, but my point is that these things can fail, and we've heard of case studies where IDDs have failed, putting the additional cost taxes on existing homeowners, like my brother. Okay, Williamson County is the most desirable county to live in. Developers want to build here. In their building plans, developers already include amenities to boost livability, and they already agree to foot the bill for infrastructure. With the IDD, developers receive tax breaks and lower infrastructure costs. So how do IDDs benefit the existing communities? And I appreciate y'all talking about that, because for me, Armistead is the starting point, not the ending point. I think we can do much better than Armistead. We need to think outside the box and be exceptional, like Matt said. So I'm in favor of not setting the bar low, and I'll wrap it up here. I just appreciate you guys continuing to pull back the curtain and really understand IDDs and how it affects Williamson County.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shane Kimbrough. Okay, I don't see Shane Kimbrough, so we'll go to Patrick Collins, followed by Jeff Goodspeed.
I'm Patrick Collins, 4458 North Chapel Road in Franklin. Congratulations to Messrs. Potts, Brown, and Baggett at their reselection to the board. All I can say is, Father, forgive them, because they don't know what they're doing. Based on the comments I'm hearing tonight, you folks don't understand MUDs and PUDs and IDDs. It does only certain things. It enriches lawyers. It transfers costs from developers to somebody else. It enriches the municipality with a 5% expense to manage and collect the fees. There's no stated guarantor. You know, if you have a revenue issue, somebody's obligated there is collateral for that bond, not this mystical number of houses out there. It's awful. It's awful. This is like opening a can of grasshoppers in grandma's parlor, okay? Y'all will rue the day you ever did this. You undersell Franklin. Franklin is one of the most desirable destinations in the entire country, and you're cheapening it. I'd like to know what the definition of affordable and attainable housing is according to the board's formal definition, because nobody knows. It's rhetoric. Thank you, folks.
Mr. Goodspeed, and then I've got Rick Cannon, I think that's Cannon, Craig Hoover, and Alex Graves. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mayor and Alderman.
State your name, please.
Sorry, Jeff Goodspeed.
Thank you.
I want to highlight a dangerous growth pattern that's spreading across our nation, and a pattern built on infrastructure development districts, forced annexation, and high-density development. Individually, these tools create problems, but together they create a perfect storm for long-term financial risk and community harm. IDDs create a massive hidden debt that homeowners never approve. These districts issue 20 to 40-year bonds, shifting the entire cost of roads, drainage, and other infrastructure. In states like Florida, 168 IDDs defaulted, leaving half-built communities and property values slashed by 40 and 50%. IDDs encourage reckless overbuilding because developers take the profit while residents take the debt. Second, annexation forces cities to absorb failing districts. When IDD underperforms or collapses, the city must step in, take over roads and other infrastructure projects. This becomes taxpayer-funded bailout, even when officials claim the development would pay for itself. Annexation increases obligation when providing nowhere near enough revenue to maintain the inherited infrastructure. Third, high-density mandates make these failures far worse. Density interferes with traffic, flooding, school overcrowding, or infrastructure that we never properly funded or engineers. IDD-built systems often lack capacity, and adding more units only accelerates service breakdowns and emergency response delays. This combined impact is severe. Cities inherit long-term liability problems, residents face higher taxes, and local control is replaced by developer-driven debt.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening, y'all. My name is Rick Canada, live at 4348 North Chapel Road. The Tampa Clearwater Cay Community Development District is one of the clearest examples of how dangerous CDDs can be when things go wrong, and what happened there should serve as a warning for every homeowner and every policymaker. Here are the key takeaways. Homeowners didn't understand what they were buying into. Most had no idea as they were entering a special taxing district with long-term financial obligation hidden deep in the legal paperwork. Developers controlled the district and issued massive debt. Before residents ever got a vote, the developer handpicked the board and pushed through $30 million in bonds, debt that would later fall entirely on the homeowners. The developer ran a Ponzi scheme, and homeowners still paid the price. Even after the developer went to prison for fraud and the resort amenities were never built, the residents are still required to repay the debt through the CDD assessments. Families are blindsided by huge tax bills. Many were shocked to discover an extra $1,600 per year tacked onto their property taxes, largely to pay for the amenities that were never existed. The disclosures were technically there, quote unquote, but buried in fine print. Buyers weren't immediately informed. They found out only after the bills arrived. Taxation without representation became a reality. Even though the developer was gone, homeowners still had to shoulder the debt without real control, without fair warning, and without the promised benefits. The message is simple. When a CDD fails, homeowners, not the developer, not the builders, are the ones left holding for the broken promise. What happened in Tampa is not an anomaly and is a structural risk baked into the way CDDs are created and controlled. If you don't pay attention, it can happen here. Thank you very much.
That sounded awful. Thank you, guys. I just wanted to thank, my name is Craig Hoover. the developer of Armistead. I just want to thank Vernon and the rest of you guys for working so hard on this policy and coming up with something that I think will be a benefit to the broader community and also will be a highly disclosed additional fee that a homeowner will hopefully, likely, and want to pay. And if they don't want to pay it, they can pay it off at closing and finance that as well. So this is not something that lives for 30 years because they just has to. They can pay it when they buy the house, or the builder can pay it when they do it. I just wanted to say that we're going to submit here next week. We've got the notice of intent here. We followed the policy as it was written the last we saw it. We're hoping to break ground in May, and we've built around this. And we'd really like for you guys to consider us an exceptional benefit, walkable, preservation, open space, agri-hood, really a transformative community for Franklin and really for the United States. And so hopefully we'll be proud. This will be a proud guinea pig for this new IDD operation. So thank you guys. Look forward to seeing this.
Mr. Grays, Alex Grays. And Mr. Kimbrough, did he? So, okay, I want to ask Mr. Stuckey to maybe summarize there and then we'll finish this meeting.
I just want to kind of feedback some of what I've heard and what I think our next steps would be is to update the policy based on some of the discussions specifically around clarifying process and approval to align with the development process itself and to align with the approval the board would consider at the development plan stage. We'd look at maybe more clarification around a holdback structure and what that might look like, or at least some broad guidance there. Talk specifically, it's in here, but maybe provide additional clarity around transparency for those participating in the process to identify it as it goes. I think there's some other fine tuning that we've done based on other dialogue we've had. I don't think it's substantive, but it's some of the dialogue we had with Mr. Rosenberg and some others who raised questions. A number of those were pretty clear clarifications. So we would do all that and bring you back an updated draft policy for discussion at your next work session if we could. We'll see if we're able to pull that off between now and then, but it'll be at one of the January sessions to give you a chance to really weigh on something that's a little more finalized based on what we've heard tonight and answer some additional questions that we may not have been able to get to completely tonight as well. So that would be what I would work with and staff would take as our charge out of this meeting. If there's anything I'm missing, please let me know and we'll keep working at your guidance.
Alderman Brands, you want to make a
Just a question. Could we consider a work session and a voting session? If we're not ready, we defer. But if there's minor, it sounds like there's smaller changes to make. I mean, do we feel like we're close enough to?
You can always decide to defer the item if you'd like. We can, if you're comfortable enough. I'm looking for.
I'm comfortable
if there's enough comfort of generally what we've talked about today that we can do those adjustments and give you a chance to talk about it at a work session.
Yep.
And then if you want to, then you can make your call at the voting session if you're comfortable voting. So we can do that.
Be in January.
Okay, we're going to be adjourned and we'll meet back in here in 10 minutes.